Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cameron Bell. I am your host, as always, and I'm joined not just by one, but two very special guests. So we've got a lot of questions from our chief executive subscribers on our Patreon site to be able to go through. First of all, let me introduce my good pal, Ross Hutton. Ross, straight back from a interesting trip abroad.
Yeah, I had a wonderful wee holiday there, bookended, of course, by that fantastic win at Parkhead. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to do these, Cammy, after not just a big win, but a couple of big wins and a couple of fantastic results to talk about, which is quite refreshing actually for this season.
And also joining us, not caring a jot about the holidays at the moment, although I'm sure he has one coming up pretty soon, but more excited about the upcoming wrestling event is Kevin Armstrong.
2 weeks on Saturday, Cammy, that I'm counting. Yes, I booked that long before Rangers decided to become good again, which was, as Ross says, a very welcome addition to this season, even if it is slightly later than we'd hoped.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, boys, listen, we don't have a game to talk about because it's the International Week, and as I say, we thought we'd turn over the pod this week to our chief exec subscribers over on our Patreon site to ask about some of the questions, comments, anything they wanted to talk about, such as their privilege. And I think it's fair to say that one of the main topics of some of the questions that we got were of a similar nature, and that is relating to the statement that Rangers brought out relating to fan banners, fan behaviour, etc., etc. I'm not going to read out the statement. It's on the Rangers website if anyone wants to be able to go and check it out. But Ross, I'll ask you both, but Ross, I'll ask you first. An interesting statement, which I think was well written, and I think, it didn't miss the mark. I'm not a fan of doing a statement just for statement's sake or being able to do it in response to something which then becomes tit for tat. But it was very strongly worded, very much deliberately so. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, they didn't miss them, did they? I always kind of think when you're privileged enough to be in a position, and we are privileged enough to be in a position where we not only have a voice, but we have a platform to be able to talk about Rangers, you need to use that platform wisely. And it was in that section in the Copeland that the Union Bears are in. I don't know who brought up that banner. I don't know the individual responsible for it, but fundamentally, if you are in that section, you have a voice, you have a platform because you're in with the Rangers singing section. And David touched upon this a wee bit earlier on the daily update on Wednesday, and he was speaking about this concept of speaking for the full support, right? And I think it's something that I try and be acutely aware of when I'm fortunate enough to be able to use this platform, is that you're speaking to the Rangers support, not at the Rangers support, and certainly not for the Rangers support. Because if you tried, or anyone tried to claim that you could speak for the Rangers support, then my God, you need to be quite a confused person. This is the old joke, isn't it? That if you had 10 Rangers fans to be dumped on a desert island, there would be 11 RSCs the next morning. You can't claim to speak for the full support, but when you're putting banners up like that in that section, that is exactly what you're doing. You're projecting that whether you want to or not. Now, people might turn around and say, well, I'm just speaking for myself here. It's not meant to be for the full support, and I'm exercising my right to freedom of speech. Well, that's one thing. I completely respect freedom of speech, but I think as anyone who's aware of John Stuart Mill would know, the harm principle, your liberty to swing your fist ends where my nose begins. And what these people have done is they've given thousands other Rangers fans a bloody nose, because we are now in a position, Cammy, where we could be looking at a section closure for the Bilbao game at Ibrox. We could be looking at a stand closure for the Bilbao game at Ibrox. And I think, as again David rightly said in the Daily Update, it's just self-indulgent to do that, because you've now just punched Rangers fans in the face, and thousands are potentially now going to miss out on the opportunity to watch their club in a European quarter-final. You can't do that. You can't do that. So just to do it in that setting, to do it in those circumstances, it's pathetic. People throwing things on the pitch and that players are pathetic, in my opinion. We're all adults here. So doing that under those circumstances on a night like that, where I think you did see the best and worst of that section, the penalties, the atmosphere was incredible, driven by the singing section, but you saw the worst of it as well in that moment. And freedom of speech does not does not come with freedom of responsibility, doesn't come with freedom of consequences. And I'm now really worried about the consequences for innocent Rangers fans who weren't caught up in that, who might now potentially miss out on a chance to watch Rangers in the European quarter-final. And I'm gutted about that. Absolutely gutted about that, because it's not fair. UEFA don't take a lenient view on these things. I don't really agree with collective punishment, but that's the route they go down. And I'm now really worried for the Rangers fans who are going to miss out on that, because it's going to be a special night either way that they might not be able to be a part of for no fault of their own.
Yeah, Kev, I think Ross hits a lot of very solid points there. I think the other issue that when we talk about, can we take action against UEFA? UEFA, it's a dictatorship. UEFA run the show, right? You can't fight back against them because, it's their ball. So if they don't like it, they don't like it. And the issue that we have, that whilst I say with absolute respect in terms of our recent European performances over the last number of years and been able to get this far this season, speaks volumes of how much we've been able to achieve. We are also there because we don't play in one of the top 5 leagues, and we're not a threat to the cash cow that UEFA enjoys milking, that we can be made an example of. And that almost comes into double jeopardy, because I'm not a huge... Listen, I'm not a huge fan. I've never been a huge fan of being able to make political statements at the football. We've laughed long and hard at Celtic for their, continuance of trying to do that all the time. And as Ross said, there is a degree of behaviour which I think all football fans, I'm not containing it to Rangers fans, but I think when you go to games, there is a reasonable expectation of how you behave. And if people fall below that, then they are right to be punished as far as I'm concerned. But this now looks and feels like as if we are now going to be able to turn this towards fans who you are nothing to do with it. And as Ross says, may miss out on, and we're already missing out on, domestic cup competitions with our bans at Hampden whenever they come into effect. And now other fans may end up paying a cost for this. And by and large, we need everyone behind the team. And closed sections will certainly not help us accomplish that.
They won't. I was always brought up that whenever you were outside, if you were wearing a Rangers top or scarf, hat, you represent the club. I was always told, just act like a Rangers supporter, and that's being your best behaviour. You are a representative of the club at that time. And Ross has summarised it perfectly by more or less saying, with great power comes great responsibility. The Uni Bears and the other fans group do wonderful work with that section. We all marvel at their various displays, the atmosphere they generate, and I do slightly include pyro in that, which is perhaps a topic for another day, but perhaps not. It's sort of included here as well, as where it's fine wanting to do things, but if it's literally going to damage the club, and you're right, Cammy, you can't and you will not beat UEFA. This is not the SFA. This is Big Boys League, and we know too well that how often we're fair at our ground, long after everyone else had stopped more or less being watched, it seems. We were on a sort of hit list. We don't want to attract this sort of attention to ourselves, and listen, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even know what the banner meant. I was like, what are they talking about? But somebody obviously knew what it meant. Somebody got upset about it. That somebody is UEFA. You can't do it. You will not win. Probably one of the worst parts for me was it took the shine off what has been a fantastic week. We've all had brilliant drama with the penalty shootout, and then of course going to the East End and winning in that manner, and then of whole Watergate. The memes have been brilliant. I said to you boys before recording, I hate talking about statements. I hate that there's a need for statements to be made, but I can totally understand where the club are coming from. This is hurting the club. Please do not do it. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And thank you. As I say, what we're going to do is we'll probably amalgamate some of the questions that we have from listeners into a few different topics. And again, this was an emotive one, and I appreciate that everyone will have their points of view. And as Ross said earlier on, it's not for us to dictate your point of view. Of course not. We would never do that. But again, we will see what happens next. But I think the unilateral message from everyone really has to be, we are in this position because there will be fans who feel that their voice should be heard louder, and hopefully, people can learn lessons from this and move on, and wherever possible, not damage the club or the fans. We will have to wait and see. Gents, let's jump into another pretty common theme through some of the questions that we got, which is obviously about the upcoming takeover moving along at pace. And as we are led to believe, pretty much looks like as if it's close to being completed, announced, and then we'll start to get some projected dates for when that will be coming in, and obviously what the changes will be. One of the interesting topics that's come in, and we will talk about the manager, by the way, and players in due order, but Brett asked in terms of the takeover seemingly being close to completion, do we feel the CEO and chairman will currently be in place will remain, or do you think the takeover group have identified the next sporting director so that they can start as soon as possible? Another comment in alignment with this, and I'll come on to you, Kev, first of all, is also about do we feel Niles Coppin will remain in role? My own tuppence worth is I believe the timing of the CEO and chairman appointments with this takeover already in motion, because we know that it's been happening probably towards the latter part of 2024. And chairman and CEO came in just at the tail end of the year. I believe that they are part of that structure. Now, people have suggested to me that Patrick Stewart has come in order to facilitate the takeover and then may potentially leave. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that. I could be, of course, proven wrong. The sporting director role has been very exclusively talked about, and we know that people are being interviewed for it, whether or not those approaches are coming from themselves or the club reaching out to certain people. And Niles Coppin, for me, it feels like there isn't an immediate need for him to leave, if that makes sense, if we're able to set in place a structure that's going to complement him. But Kev, keen to get your thoughts on that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because as football fans, we tend to like to assign blame quite quickly, whether it's managers, whether it's directors of football, or whatever title you want to give them. For what it's worth, I think the chairman and CEO will be fine. I think they'll remain in place. No, Coppin, unsure. I think certainly in the eyes of the fans, the last two transfer windows, if we want to sort of put them down as his signings, how many have been good? A couple. How many have been brilliant? Anyone really? And I always think you're more harshly judged on your big money signings. So if we say by Rami, that's a wee bit iffy, that one. Diomande from the previous window looks like he's going to come good. So maybe a wee bit of a 50-50 strike rate. Some of the younger players we've brought in, yep, they'll probably be flipped for some good money. But I say at Rangers, it's always we always seem to struggle over the last couple of years, Cammy, with that sort of £2 to £4 million signing, don't we? There's very few we've actually gotten right. The sporting director will be very interesting to see what he does. I say I'm not privy to any information. I don't know how good Coppin is. We're only looking from the outside in. Would I bet on being there long term? Maybe not, and that's just a gut instinct. That's clearly not based on anything, any knowledge or anything. That's just my own personal feeling.
Ross, any thoughts in terms of those kind of senior positions?
Yeah, I would expect the likes of Patrick Stewart to stay in place. I can completely agree with the two you said. I think the timing of their coming into the club is pointing in that kind of direction. I think Niles Coppin is much more a kind of interesting topic, because I do think there's a question mark there, and that is down to whoever the new sporting director is, maybe wanting to implement their own kind of style. Because remember, Niles Coppin's going to go back down to, I say back down, that's probably being deeply unfair in the way I'm putting that, but he's going to go back to just being director of recruitment. I think what Kevin said there, the strike rate isn't perfect. It's never going to be. but I think you maybe be wanting a wee bit more bang for your buck in some of those signings. I keep coming back to Oscar Cortez. I don't get this at all. Why we've married ourselves to Cortez, somebody who we've seen very little from, and no harm to the boy, because when he does play for those 7 minutes a season or whatever it is, he looks decent, he looks fine, but we have not seen nearly enough of him to be able to justify the outlay that we're going to put towards him in the summer there that we're now obligated to do. That one to me just seems mental. Perhaps that was a Clermont thing driving that. We don't know. As Kev said, we're looking from the outside in. But I would want any director of recruitment or any sporting director worth their salt to kind of go, right, hang on a minute here. You can't justify that kind of money, and be brave enough to be able to do that. And maybe, and hopefully when we get a new sporting director in, that will be the case. I do agree though, I wouldn't put my house on Coppin being there in the long run. If the new sporting director comes in, I don't think it's going to be in the short term, but if the new sporting director comes in and Coppin doesn't really kind of set the heather alight with any kind of good, really, really good finds in the summer, good signing, I'm not sure. Maybe that's the kind of moment where the sporting director would want to quietly try and move him out as quietly as you possibly could in that scenario and get his own people in to try and implement his vision. So I think a lot depends on how this summer goes, the relationship that Coppin is able to build with a new sporting director. If we have a good summer and we have a good manager in and all the stars are aligning, then fantastic. Very, very rarely works like that in football though.
Ross, I'll stick with you on this one because, again, Takeover related. We've got a couple of these which I think are great questions. This one comes from Richard, and he asked, what do you think the top three off-field things that you hope that they can either change or improve? I'll give you one, Ross. I'll answer one, Kev. You can come in with yours as well. Ross, kick us off.
Okay, thank you. I think one thing that has been improving, and over the last couple of years I'd say it's been improving, but I still think we could go a wee bit further on, is constant communication with the fans. There was some good fan engagement events, and we have the fan advisory board as well now, which I think is a really positive thing. I think just kind of having more events or opportunities for fans to meet Patrick Stewart, maybe meet kind of members of the Rangers board to be able to air fans' views and for them to get a bit of a temperature check of just what your everyday Rangers fan is thinking, feeling, wanting in those kind of moments in time. I think in the past, Rangers have been quite poor at communicating with fans. I don't really hold that as much against the kind of current people in the administration right now. I think Patrick Stewart broadly has been better and has tried to engage with fans. I think his video a couple of weeks ago was a positive step in being able to do that. But there needs to be more done, and I think there could be more done there, in my opinion. So that's probably one of the things I would like, especially at the start when you have a completely clean slate and you do get that goodwill from the fans. Build on that by having constant communication. We appreciate it.
Kev, what's your thoughts? Anything that you would like to see us or the new owners being able to change, implement, improve?
I mean, it's really quite a simple one, Cammy. It's the concourses at Ibrox. Make it more welcoming. If you want people to go in and spend money, maybe go in an hour early, put a tiny bit of effort in them, right? This is so petty, it's so basic. I sit in the main stand rear. There's been old desks that have sat beside the stairwell since I started attending those seats about 20 years ago. They have gathered dust, they gather everything, dump them, get a wee coat of paint run over. It's such a small thing, but make the concourses more welcoming, put something on the tellies and get people in the stadium early. Many people hang about outside, they will, sure, go to New Edmiston House, but that can't hold everyone. There's meant to be a sports bar opening, get that up and running. But there's so much more you could do. People will run into Ibrox at 10 to 3. Some people will leave at 4:45, and that's it. I think that is such a simple thing that you could just... I mean, we used to joke on the site that there were still pictures of Chris Burkup wanting you to sell your Rangers pools and some of the toilets and things like that. A wee bit of TLC is needed around the stadium, and yes, people will say there is bigger issues afoot. But for me, that's just a simple thing that you could do to earn goodwill with the supporters, the season ticket holders that go to the same place every week. I say just put a wee bit of love and effort into our stadium, because the current owners have certainly fixed the roof and things like that. They've undertook major jobs. now it's time to really bring us back up to standard.
Yeah, listen, I don't think it's petty at all. I understand the cosmetic element of it is important, and I think the other thing we sometimes forget is, as incredibly proud as we are of Ibrox, there has been development work done on it, throughout the last number of years, but it's aimed more towards the commercial side of things. So whether it's Gordon Ramsay, whether or not it's the Blue Sky Lounge, New Emerson House, it's part of the museum, etc., etc. I understand all of that, and I think you're right. I think there are parts of the stadium that could certainly do with a touch up. I think it is an interesting one because it probably ties into something that I'd be keen for us to be able to see at probably wider scale, Kevin, which is probably an improvement on the overall Ibrox blueprint. So I think that you're right. There are times where people will come over at 10-3. They're in the stadium for the game and then they're back out again. And there isn't a great deal of variety for people to do and to spend money on and to spend time in and around the stadium. So, you're right. We do have New Emerson House. Obviously, kids can go into that, but it can fill up really quickly. If the new bar opens, that will divert some of the traffic in there. But there are pieces of Ibrox that it seemed that we did try and start up. We've tried a few different things in that way. Like the fan zones and been able to do like kind of outside concerts, and they seem to have kind of died a death. We've got that section as you walk up from the Copeland Road to where the Wall of Champions is, and you had wee bits and bobs there. So I suppose really what I'm thinking about is more just stuff for the kids to be able to try and do, but you're not really going to want to drag the kids out to that in the second week in December when it's horrible weather, it's freezing. So where else can we put these people that isn't necessarily just in the stadium or just in Edmiston House? Because you want to be able to try and give people a reason to be able to try and come over and vary it a little bit as well. So, yeah, that would be quite interesting. Maybe they all tie together because, as Ross mentioned there, with communication with the club from the fans advisory board, there may be people, and we've got large numbers across the planet where people will have attended different sporting events, non-football related. I've been to a few basketball games, as you boys know, across in America. And the big thing within there is it is about getting people into the arena, into the concourses, into all that kind of stuff. And you turn your head, there's a vendor over here, or there's a t-shirt pop-up shop over here, and you can do all of these different things as well. And it would be interesting to find out if anyone has suggestions for how to be able to do that internally and externally as well. Kev, I'm going to stick with you on this one in terms of a question related to the takeover. And this is from Doogie, and he asks, really all excited for the takeover. The question is, will we lose our traditions or identity having American owners?
I wouldn't think so. From everything we've sort of heard from the Leeds United end, which is all we can really go on just now, is something that the new owners seem quite keen to keep. I'm trying not to get too excited just now until the old Scarce picture is taken and up on the website. Then I'll be happy. But no, I'm not really worried about that. We've had many owners over the years, and the identity's pretty much remained the same. It's all down to the support, and at the end of the day, I mean, I can't think of anything that they would do majorly to change the identity. And if it would, it'd be a really tough sell. No, so that's not something I'm too worried about.
Ross?
No, I can't say I'm overly worried about it either, to be honest. I think, to the best of our ability, we as fans won't let temporary people make permanent decisions like that. I can't see the new owners taking down the picture of the king in the dressing room, for example. We're still going to do Armed Forces and Remembrance Day commemorations. We're still going to fly the Union flag over the stadium. Everything you want Rangers to be in terms of the institution that we are is still going to be there, right? I don't think that's going to change. What I do want them to change in terms of our identity is to actually turn us into a winning club again and recapture that bit of the identity. So if they can do a positive job and recapture probably the corest of core parts of Rangers' identity, which is winning trophies on a regular basis in Scotland, then they're good by my book. But in terms of the The other things in terms of the kind of workaround of what makes Rangers the football club that it is, no, I'm not particularly concerned about that. I'm a wee bit like Kevin, actually. I'm really excited for this, but I feel myself holding it back because I just want it to be over, and we've been burned so many times in the past, but I'm really, really enthusiastic about what I hope will be a bit of a bridge to better days.
And I'm going to stick with you on this one, Ross, because this comes from Ronnie, and it's related to being able to provide stability, which I think is absolutely right. And in turn for that, looking to become the dominant club domestically again. What I'm interested in is your thoughts that will it take stability in terms of some macro improvements and some minor tweaks here and there in order to make sure that Rangers are able to get back to winning ways, or is this going to take something larger? Is it going to be a shockwave for us to come in? And again, we've talked about the internal football review that's in play at the moment. That may, of its own merit, produce some fairly shocking revelations and recommendations for change. Or is it just a case of let's not come in and shake the tree too much, because you may not be able to keep the fan base on side if you decide that you want to come in and rip things up and start it all over again?
It depends on what you're ripping up, because if you're talking about ripping up the playing squad, I think you'd have complete buy-in almost universally from the fans at that. As I said right at the start, I don't want to speak for everybody, I'm not trying to, but I think pretty much we're all agreed that we need better players, players who will give you an element of stability, because if Rangers are winning on the park, then we can forgive pretty much everything else. If it's about creating stability in the management team by doing something quite radical, whether that is getting a big name in or the likes, then yeah, I think you would have a lot of buy-in for that as well. Fundamentally, if you want to do radical things with Rangers, then you need to be winning on the park. And maybe that ties into what we were speaking about just a moment ago, where I don't think the new owners are going to come in and start tearing up Rangers traditions. I'm not too worried about that. In terms of shock and awe tactics over the summer, I would welcome it. I think we need to see change. So the owners coming in and maybe kind of taking their time to get to know the place and not wanting to rock the boat too much. For me personally, that isn't really what I want here. I want them to come and rock the boat because the boat needs rocked, in my opinion. What we've done over the last few seasons hasn't worked. It's got us into the position that we are in now. And these owners are coming in with a clean slate. And I think as well with a bit of a mandate to go and shake the club to its foundations and turn us in a direction so we can be a winning force in Scotland again. I don't think just going in and trying to play the system as it is, so to speak, is going to work. And as I said, I think most Rangers fans, certainly the ones that I speak to anyway, Cammy, are hoping that they come in and do something quite radical, because it's a very exciting summer when that happens. In my lifetime, obviously, with Steven Gerrard, that's one of the most exciting summers I've had as a Rangers fan, because you felt things happening, you could see it, and there was new signings, and you kind of felt like momentum was building. I'm looking for something like that again. That maybe starts with the managerial appointment, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a wee bit more depth later on, Cammy. But for me, I'm wanting a wee bit of shock and all this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's totally fair. Let's talk a little bit about the playing squad, because we did get some questions around this. I'm going to slightly change a couple of the questions here because I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to give me 3 players you'd be comfortable see leave the club at the end of the season, and 3 players that you want to ensure are still here for the beginning of season 25-26. A little bit of a spoiler alert, you don't get to pick Lyle Cameron. So, Kevin, I'll kick off with you. 3 players that you would be pretty comfortable left Rangers come the end of May.
Let's try and get some money in. So I'll say Robin Proper. I think he stinks of back to the Dutch league.
No way back for you, you don't think?
Nah, he's just not suited for this league. I was just listening to Ross there, and it was hilarious when you think that the new owners are going to have to come in and what's your biggest challenge? Is it Europe? No. Is it beating Celtic? Well, not really, no. Is it beating all the jobber teams? Yeah, we struggle with that. It's really, really strange. It's, as a sort of kid of the 90s, it's just so foreign to me for that this is an issue. But back to the point, Robin Proper, hopefully try and get our money back. Looks a decent player, just not built for Scottish football. By Rami, another one that you could hopefully get your money back on. Again, doesn't really look the type of player. Our third one would be Ridvan Yilmaz. Again, been here for years, never nailed in a place. If you can get your money back, you take it back and you save a good amount of wages.
Ross, any disagreement, any that you'd like to add
There's
in
not
there?
really any kind of disagreements there, to be honest. More an addition that would probably be Jack Butland. I think we should have sold him in the summer there, cashed in on him and reinvested that money into other areas of the squad. You could perhaps make the argument we might not have reinvested it well. Totally understand and appreciate that. But I think we've maybe missed the boat on his maximum valuation. So if we can get some money back for him in the summer, and I think we still could command a good fee for Jack Butland and move him on and then use that money to reinvest into the squad for the rebuild that I think us three at least acknowledges is going to be required, then I would say that as a positive.
Okay. Anyone else you'd like to see head out the door?
I'm
Let me put you in the
not
spot.
chasing these.
What about the captain?
I was going to come on to that, Cammy. I was going to say I am not chasing James Tavernier out the door in the summer. However, I think it would probably be best for all parties if that was that. 10 years, you can have a testimonial. I think at that point we are looking at it as a new era, I think, as Rangers fans. It would be a bit of a clean break. Now, that's maybe me being romantic about it. And I'm a massive James Tavernier fan. I've been very critical of him before. I've been very critical of him on this site, but he's given me a lot of wonderful moments following Rangers. And I will always thank him for that. However, I do think it was probably time last summer. I think it's definitely time this summer.
Right, Ross, I'll stick with you on this, and we're going to do a keeper sale, and this comes from Jordan, who said that wants to keep a core of good young players under 25 years old in the squad. We can add in quality and experience on top of that within certain key positions. So, keep or sell Jeffy?
Keep.
Ridvan Yilmaz? Insiala?
Keep.
Barron?
Keep.
Okay, Kev, over to you. Nico Raskan?
I'm going to sort of put a wee asterisk beside this and put as long as the money is not ridiculous, right? So just from a team building point of view, keep.
Diomande?
Keep.
Egaman?
Keep.
Even if we get ridiculous offers?
If it's ridiculous offers, then this is off the table, because I keep preaching on our preview show that we need to get comfortable with selling when we are not wanting to sell. Ross mentioned Jack Butland. He should have been away. This is what if you want to get this training model moving, you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's the job of the scouting department to say, the manager has to say, right, Jack Butland's away, we need a new goalie. Here's 4 options, who do you want? But yeah, everyone's got a price, as the $1 Million Man said all those years ago. I hate when daft teams like Hibs say, oh, this player's no for sale at any price. Of course he is, stupid, right? Everyone has a price. You ideally want a bidding war. Egaman's probably the perfect example. We have been so guilty, Cammy, in the last couple of years of, look at Alfredo, probably the perfect example of somebody offered us 16, but we wanted 18 or something. Sometimes you just need to sell and move on. But yeah, those players you mentioned would probably be the ones you'd hope to get a really good year out of next year, and then have the difficult task of replacing them after you've made mega bucks from them.
Okay. I'll give you 2 more. Cortez?
Sell, I agree with Ross. I think it was a ludicrous decision to buy him. If he becomes the next Lionel Messi next year, I will hold my hands up and say I was wrong. But to buy a player that was injured when he was on loan at you is just ludicrous.
He may become the next Lionel Messi, but I can guarantee you won't do it in a Rangers shirt, such as our luck. The last one, Sterling.
The most Rangers phrase ever, Cammy. If we can keep him fit, is brilliant. I mean, that's our crest has the word ready under it. It should soon to be replaced by if we can keep him fit. hates them, loves getting stuck in, the type of player that Rangers supporters love, that bit of dig. If that's a wonderful question, isn't it? If you could pick a player over the last couple of years to have had their injuries removed, I think it'd be between Sterling and Jordan Rossiter for me, who would have been absolutely brilliant for us.
Can I throw
Jordan
one in there,
Rossiter,
Cammy? Just
of course, sir.
just to get your views. Danilo?
I would be selling him.
Kev?
Depends how much you get for them. Like, if you're going to get $500,000, you're probably as well keeping them. But if you get anywhere near, no laughing at the back, you're $6 million back, you take it.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I'd bite your hand off for $6 million for him. Okay, well, let me just throw another one at you boys, and I'll take an answer off you each, please, if that's all right. Keeping with the current squad as is this now, what position do you prioritise as your first purchase of the summer? What's the most pivotal one in your eyes?
Striker.
Kev?
Just to be different from Ross, because I would agree, right? We need a proven goal scorer, and some people will be shouting about Dessers right now. A left-sided centre back that could stay fit. A combination of Helander and Balogun, ideally, would be lovely.
Yeah, it would not surprise me if we end up keeping Leon Balogun on for another year. But listen, that's another pod for another time. Okay, well, listen, let's move to the dugout then, lads, as we kind of start to get close to wrapping this up. Rob sent us this question over. We'll talk about Barry specifically in just a moment, but going on the assumption that we are going to be appointing a new permanent manager in the summer, what type of manager would you prefer, Kev? A known name, a system/philosophy guy, a bastard, which I think is a great description. Anyone, do you have a preference in terms of those styles who you would like to be able to take over as next permanent manager of Rangers?
I always believe that the sort of figurehead works best for us. Again, anyone that's ever listened to our preview show for the 2 hours a week it is on would know that I'm always on about how it's not just a manager we need, it's the management team nowadays. I think if you look at the successful ones, Souness, Walter, even Advocat, they did an aura about them. Gerrard, Ross mentioned earlier. Even Barry now, right? I don't think any of us would claim that Barry is tactically better than Jose Mourinho, but he's got the better of him. I think he just gets that wee bit more out of players, but he's ably assisted by people like Neil McCann and Billy Dodds who've been through Scottish football and sort of earned their stripes. I think the team needs a wee bit of everything you specified there, but I would be looking for the figurehead. And then, say that Michael Beale was an able assistant to Gerrard. I was not going to mention his manager spell. We'll move on quickly from that. But you look at Culshaw and things like that. It's the whole team. It's everyone in it together. Much like a team on the pitch, the management team has to have a wee bit of everything off it as well.
Just leading in, I'll stick with you on this one, Kev, because I think it is an interesting question, which is also related to this. Does the new manager have to be British?
For me, yes. I think we've only ever had one non-British manager win the league, and that was Advocat, who spent gazillions. So that's the exception, not the rule. I think even if you look across the city, I don't think David too many. So yeah, for me, it has to be British.
Ross, anything from your side on that?
I would agree. Ideally, the new manager's British, but if British means Russell Martin, then I can leave that. To be perfectly honest, I completely agree with what Kevin was saying. Rangers need a figurehead that we as fans can follow and buy into and really almost kind of see ourselves in, because they represent us there in the dugout. I think the players here need a figurehead as well, somebody that they have immense respect for, but also a little bit of fear. That always helps. As much as I would like the new manager to be British, I don't think you're looking around now at who's out of work. Russell Martin's really that kind of figure. Somebody who is out of work, knows the club, is British. Steven Gerrard's name keeps popping up. Maybe that's just convenience. I don't know. I kind of keep going back and forth in my head about how I would actually feel about that. I'm still not entirely sure. I could give an opinion today and then change it by tomorrow morning. I really don't know where I sit on that kind of prospect. But I would agree, in an ideal world, the new manager would be British, or would at least be supported by a strong British contingent in the management team, which, again, I completely agree with Kevin, is just as, almost if not more important, than the actual manager itself, because it needs to be supplemented and supported by that strong support that they have in that management team.
Is there anything, Ross, I'll stick with you on this because this is a kind of question from Martin, which talks about a couple of different scenarios. Fundamentally, it's about whether or not he does well against Bilbao, still loses respectfully, but beats Celtic again. We're able to cut the league down or the league gap down to single points. Obviously, we're not going to win the league, but we get there and we're able to make a dent, I suppose, in the best way. Alternatively, if he gets battered off Bilbao and the team start to check out again, it's going to severely damage any hopes of it. I cannot foresee a scenario shy of actually winning the Europa League where Ferguson stays on as manager or remains within the management setup at Rangers come the beginning of next season.
Yeah, I agree, to be honest. Short of doing a kind of Dimity at Chelsea type thing and almost accidentally going and winning a European trophy, then no, I can't see any scenario where he's a manager next season. There's a kind of interesting discussion about if he has a role in the management team, because we've just spoken quite a bit there about having a strong kind of British presence and people who understand fundamentally what Rangers is. If Barry does beat Celtic at Ibrox, right, and he's obviously got through the Fenerbahce tie, and we can joke about it all we want, but did over two legs get the better of Jose Mourinho in that sense, and then Barry is part of a management coaching team through under a new manager in the summer. If things don't get off to a good start under that new manager, is it not the most kind of obvious press thing in the world to then go, well, Barry could beat Celtic, why can't you? Barry had good European results, why didn't you? I think that could cause a lot of headaches very, very quickly. I'm not completely averse to the idea. I think he's doing himself no harm. I also think Barry Ferguson might have ambitions to actually go back into management himself on a kind of full-time basis with a club. And with that, I'd wish him all the best. And I don't think he's done himself any harm over the last few weeks being the Rangers head coach. I could foresee the problem. So if he was to maintain his place in a kind of management team under a new manager, if it does kind of look like the Prince across the water type situation, I can see how that relationship could sour quite quickly.
Kev, I've said before on a number of our pods actually that one of the things that I would like to see personally that Barry Ferguson, and I'm not saying he's not taking it seriously, right? So let me phrase this very carefully. But if he is legitimately serious about becoming a full-time Rangers manager, I think, Kev, the best way he does that is that he finishes up the end of this season, everyone parts company, and then he goes back into full-time management elsewhere and works his way back to Rangers. Because I think the concern that, I know I'm not alone in this because we've obviously discussed this at the time of his appointment, was the limitations of his experience. And I think that, and I sincerely believe this, by the way, because I think there's two key things to me when it comes to Barry Ferguson. First of all, if he is able to, I think he's achieved it now, beating Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce, and he's now beaten Celtic. And I think if we are able, as suggested, to get the league gap down to single figures, I think he walks into most clubs in the bottom half of the Premier League and below. I think he walks into any of them. Whether he wants to do that or not is entirely down to him and how seriously he wants to be able to take it. But if he's able to go and do all that and then, as I say, garner more experience to be able to do that, maybe even go down south or abroad or whatever. But I think he has to be the manager. I just cannot see him working his way, exactly as Ross said there, that whole scenario of him being a number two or not making the final decisions himself. I cannot see it. I really, really genuinely struggle with it. So if he's able to go elsewhere and, as I say, work his way back to Rangers, having garnered that experience, then I would be looking at it from a far different optic, Kev.
It's strange, isn't it? I think let's pretend that happened, right? Okay, so Rangers and Barry shake hands. Barry would decided to go with another who will be bringing in his team. Do you want to be a part of it? I don't think Ferguson would accept that. I don't think you can go from being the man to being number 2 or 3. The next point is, who do you go to? Because it's going to sound really strange, right? But I don't think he's cut out to manage a Kilty or anything like that. I don't think that's his skill set. I think he's more conditioned to work with better players. Some managers are suited at different levels. But if I was him, I would say to Neil McCann and Billy Dodds, right, let's pick a club, let's do it together, let's go and earn our stripes. And it's funny, I remember having this conversation all those years ago when Walter was talking about Ali taking over. I was like, McCoy should go away for a year and do exactly what you've said. It's hard to see where he would go, Cammy, because Hearts are quite stable, Hibs are stable, which is really strange to say. I doubt he would go to Aberdeen. I doubt he'd be welcome there. Dundee United are settled. Kilmarnock are settled. St Mirren are settled. So then you're really looking at, like, a Motherwell's just employed a manager. Would they be looking for a team? Who knows? So you're really looking at the sort of crud of the league, aren't you? Is Ross County going to need somebody soon? How much of an impact can you make up there? It's really a tough one, and it's fine saying go to England, but I think those 3 guys, right, I think they're just cut out for Scottish football. Some people are just meant for Scottish football. We spoke about Robin Propper earlier, who clearly is not. Those 3 guys know Scottish football inside out, and we've seen with people that have been successful in this league that when you go down south, it's a different game. You could list many managers, right? McInnes failed at Bristol City. You could say Strachan was a disaster at Middlesbrough and whatnot. I know he done okay at Southampton. And others, even Walter had a tough time doing it at Everton and stuff. So it's a different ball game there. It's a really difficult choice, but one thing I do agree with what Ross and yourself were saying, that if we go with, don't know, just pick a manager, right? I'm going to exclude Gerrard from it. Let's say it's not Gerrard, and Ross, shut your ears, go for Russell Martin, right? And he brings in this football, and we don't beat Celtic. There will be an overwhelming part of the support that say we should have stuck with Barry Ferguson. So it's certainly going to be interesting viewing over the next couple of months.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. And yeah, as I say, I think ultimately, I'd love to be able to see him become a successful Rangers manager with silverware, as Ross mentioned earlier on. That's the DNA of Rangers is winning cups as well. Right, we'll go into the second last question, boys, because it would be remiss of us not to be able to laugh at Celtic. So from Jason, he asked, do you feel that the tide is turning back into our favour against them? We've won the last 2 games, should have won the League Cup, and found a decision for them once again. Surely with the takeover, new funds, new structure, and fans united again, we can win 56. As they are showing signs of decline, it can be our time to regain top spot. It's amazing what an Old Firm win does for you. Ross, what's your thoughts?
I'm not going to put myself out there like that, just off the kind of back of the last few weeks or the last few Old Firm wins. The reality is that they are now odds on to win yet another treble, and I can't sit here in good faith after watching them win another treble and say, oh yeah, by the way, I think we're back and we're going to do them next season, because I don't feel like that. I feel as though we still have a mountain to climb. I've always kind of said that the perfect storm and the stars aligning that allowed for Gerrard to go and win 55, I'm not talking about COVID here, I'm talking about the other things that happened, might and most probably do need to happen again. Celtic need to spend a lot of money badly. They need to stop qualifying for the Champions League. And Rodgers needs to leave and they need to hire a bad manager. Now, I don't think Rodgers has really been quite as brilliant for them as they maybe anticipated in terms of the footballing spectacle. He's done okay in Europe. As I say, he's going to win a lot of trophies with them, but whenever I kind of speak to Celtic fans or see them online, they seem to be demanding an awful lot more. So if they can go and hire a poor manager after him who spends money badly and they stop qualifying for the Champions League and that financial gap closes, then yeah, I think we're definitely back in the conversation. On our end, we need to do basically everything right. We need to get a good manager in, we need to get a good sporting director, we need to sign good players. There's so many chips that need to fall in our favour. And the good thing is, and this is the positive thing, we've shown that we can be competitive against Celtic. Not just competitive, but we can go and beat them. But we need those big moments to fall for us. It's one thing beating them at Ibrox and then beating them at Parkhead when the league is basically done, and the fact that it was basically done in January is a bigger disgrace. But in those big moments like the League Cup final, we need those chips to start falling in our favour, because when they do, and when we are winning trophies again on a regular basis, that's when the tide properly begins to turn, because their mentality shifts. That's what needs to happen next season. If we can break that stranglehold that they've regained over trophies, that's when the tide turns. But we need to do that first.
Kev, I think Ross brings up a great point. It's actually something that I wanted to raise as well, that all of those things are true, right? There's a element of sequence that has to happen, but one absolute domino that has to topple is they will start to turn, because I've seen it in them so many times over the last 40 years that the minute that they've got a degree of pressure, they turn into themselves. They hate the board. Brendan Rodgers apparently was a rat when he left, but it seems all right now because he's come back winning trebles, etc. But aside from that point, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't ever watch them, right? I'm not as close to it. I've got no real desire to ever watch them. But one thing that I can see that they are doing is it's almost as if they'll placate the fans, but spend money placating the fans by buying players that probably should play a lot better than they did. Obviously, Jota is the most obvious one. They're going to be bringing back Kieran Tierney. Now, sensible Celtic fans that I've spoken to cannot understand this, but equally they can, because they know that it's the board's way of a love letter to the fans. Bringing him back, and it's a huge thing and all that. But he's not reliable because he's made of biscuits, and he's going to be costing them a fortune. So as much as it pains me to say it, and the fact that they do have cash, I don't think from last Sunday I saw any real evidence that they've spent it all that well.
I'm like you. I have not watched too much of them this year, Cammy. But Engels and Ida were reportedly 20 million. We know all too well how easy it is to spend money badly. Now, these players might go on to be cracking players, and Ida has scored big goals for them. But I think he's on a downgrade on the lad Kyogo that left. They badly miss Callum McGregor, who I think is 31 or 32. So we've seen it with Tav, that you can't always play to those 60 games a season. They catch up with you eventually. So if Engels is to replace him, there's still a lot of work to be done there. And let's just play a game of what ifs. If Barry Ferguson wins the last Old Firm game, the next one after that next season will be at Ibrox again. And if we win that, suddenly it becomes a thing that they've not beaten Rangers in so long. And that would be over a year, which is quite remarkable when you consider the state we're in. We do need them to go backwards. Going backwards can happen very, very easily, and it usually happens when you're most comfortable. We need to hope that they do more things. And listen, Cammy, if Kieran Tierney is signed for us, right, you know he would miss all season. Let's hope that continues over the other side of the city, because they seem to have remarkably better luck with injured players than we do. I don't know what their plan is for him. Will they rotate him? Will they try and save him for the bigger games? I don't know. We need to hope he's the next James McCarthy, because the press are always going on about how good Celtic's transfer policy is, and look how good they've done with this one and that one. Nobody really scrutinises you when you're winning. We know this all too well, right? We many duds during 9 in a row and things like that nobody really speaks about, because we won things and it didn't really matter. They've had players come in and go that cost a fortune and they lost money on, but nobody talks about them because they're winning things, and that's all that matters. As Ross said, that's all that matters is winning. We, even by law of averages, must be due a good transfer window. If we can get off to a really good start, and it's something I've said for ages, that they've had this sort of air about them where they know that if they drop points, it doesn't really matter, because Rangers are generally slip up, and it's happened far too often over the last couple of years. And when you're playing with that freedom that allows you to get 97th minute winners because you do have that wee bit of calmness about you. But when you're neck and neck or you're struggling to stay with someone's coattails, that's when pressure kicks in. And we've not put nearly enough of that pressure on them over the last couple of seasons. We've allowed them to play with freedom. We've slipped up first. We've dropped points first and just put all the pressure on ourselves. So let's hope we can turn the tables next year, because it doesn't take much. We've seen bigger turnarounds than 16 points happen in history before. Let's hope that happens next season.
Yeah, very true, and some good points, I think, in terms of what has to happen. And again, it was always about the sequence, isn't it? So we have to get our own house in order and hope that they then start to, as I say, turn in on themselves. So it will be interesting. The last question of today's show is from David. I'm going to read this one out because it's frankly excellent, and thank you, David, for sending it. Thank you to all of our listeners for being able to send these in. My apologies for paraphrasing and if I've in turn slaughtered some of your questions, but we had a lot of topics to be able to get through, and as again, like you say, thank you so much for contributing. Ross and Kevin. So David has sent us in to say, what's been your favourite part from the fallout of the weekend's Old Firm victory? My personal favourite has been the notion that self-proclaimed hard man, and it turns out sound engineer, Peter the Pointer Grant, would storm into a Rangers dressing room containing, at one time or another, Walter Smith, Graham Souness, Andy Gorham, Terry Butcher, Richard Gough, Graham Roberts, Bomber Brown, Terry Hurlock, Ian Ferguson, Mark Hateley, Duncan Ferguson, or even Ali McCoist. Don't let the twinkling eyes and the cheeky chappy persona fool you, kids. Sledgehammer in hand, and demand that they turn that effing music down. I would hand over many, many sheets of folding money to witness that. So, yeah, what's been your favourite part of the drama and the nonsense that always comes after a Celtic defeat in an Old Firm game? Ross, I'll give you first back.
My favourite part of this still, because I feel as though every time I see the clip, I kind of see something new in it, and it's so good, is actually the Celtic fan that was behind the dugout at the time. The guy saying, "I'm the victim here," right? There's somebody tweeted earlier on today this amazing compilation just basically of his face, and if you pause it, it's a kind of rapidly playing video, and you pause it at any time, you get a different angle of just how seething he was. It's effectively being hit by a water pistol. It's amazing. So just going back and revisiting the sheer seethe that guy had, again, I don't know, somebody's suede garments wet or something like that. It's evergreen for me. Always will be.
Kev, are you still all about Watergate?
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? It really is. I love all the memes and the videos, and I mean, they actually started the week before with the penalties and the classic still game one with the ball going over and hitting Jack and Victor at the park, and then they just rolled right in to the weekend. They're just, see that guy every time he says "I'm the victim," I get visions of that. It's a Tom Hanks movie. The guy saying "I'm the captain" now, and he's going "I'm the victim." Nobody's made that one yet, so please feel free to make it and send it to me. It's just all the memes and the pictures, and I've seen things like them being the Wicked Witch of the West, scared of the water, and the Gremlins and stuff like that. It's endless. It really is endless, and this is why we need to win more, Rangers, so we can bring back special pods about them tweeting. And special shout out to the Kerry Fail Twitter account, who's been busy for the first time in a while, and it's always good when that account starts tweeting.
I think my one outside of Watergate, because let's face it has been hilarious, isn't even the Mohamed Diamande pointing gun-shaped fingers at a support that was perfectly happy to hang effigies of Rangers fans off of their tiers. My favourite one has just got to be the picture of the nets at Parkhead with Union Jack air fresheners on them, which I just thought, whoever did that, whoever thought of that and just went out somewhere to go and buy a stilk of them and hang them up, I just thought was absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely priceless. So yeah, it's always nice to beat them, but when you get all of the drama afterwards, because they've never been beaten fairly, yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, again, it's, some of our podcasting community from that side obviously saying, someone could have been wearing suede clothes. I mean, it could have been anything in the bottle, because players are well known to drink sulfuric acid as soon as they've, come off from exerting themselves on a football pitch. But listen, it's always fun in games with them. Right, folks, listen, that will do us for Extra this week. Again, a sincere thanks. I know we've had a bit of a laugh and a joke, and we've talked about serious topics, but a huge thanks to our Chief Exec subscribers for sending in some great questions. David, you win it for the fantastic story about Peter Grant. I think that Kev, Ross and I and many listeners would also pay folding money to see Peter Grant being able to stand up to that dressing room, which ironically he very much struggled to do when he was on the park. My thanks to everyone listening. Please head on over to our Patreon site, patreon.com/Heart and Hand. You'll get loads of daily Rangers content on there as well, and it will certainly help you get through this turgid international break. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers, our executive producers. Thank you to our show sponsors, Zenith Coins, as well. Please check them out as well for some great merch and memorabilia that they produce. But my most important thanks on being able to come in and answer some of these brilliant comments and questions. First of all, to Ross Hunt.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you.
And also to Kevin Armstrong.
Thank you, Cammy. Thank you, Ross.
That's us for this week, folks. Hopefully, David will be back on Monday with Flagship, but you know where to go to if you need some content in the meantime. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.